speaker, and as soon as those speakers show up, we will get started.
Okay.
We're streaming.
Andrew, do you take the county seal home and put it on the wall?
I do. I hang it over my bed.
I don't know.
See,
That's
we're
not a
really-
fluorescent light for somebody's kitchen, though.
I see we're live.
Shoulder.
Yeah.
On shoulder.
I see we're live.
You are.
Okay.
Okay, folks, we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 26, 2021 meeting of the Albany County Legislature. I'm Andrew Joyce, and I serve as chair of the Albany County Legislature. We're conducting this public hearing remotely in accordance with the Public Officers Law, Governor Cuomo's executive orders related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and all the advice of medical professionals. The governing law directs that we hold public hearings prior to the passage of local laws. Our rules prohibit members of the public from questioning legislators and prohibits us from questioning you. Your input and your commitment to come to speak tonight is very important to us. I'd like to ask everyone, if you're not speaking, to please mute. Give you a moment to do so. We're going to do roll call momentarily, but until then, please go on mute. If you're on a phone, *69, I believe. *6 is to mute. I'd also like to note that the information for participation in tonight's public forum has been in the legislature's website since last week. This is the same format we have used since the pandemic began, which has produced robust public discourse. Our speakers tonight will be allowed 5 minutes each. We have 2 speakers signed up to speak tonight. I'd ask the clerk now to please call the roll.
Beston,
Here.
Brewski,
Here.
Bergdorf,
Here.
Chapman. Here. Clay. Cleary,
Here.
Camisso,
Here.
Cunningham,
Here.
Demolowitz,
Here.
Drake,
Here.
Epicoro,
Here.
Ethier, Feeney,
Here.
Fine,
Here.
Grimm,
Here.
Andrew Joyce,
Here.
Ray Joyce,
Here.
Kuhn,
Here.
Langdon,
Here.
Lakakis,
Here.
Lockhart,
Here.
Mariello,
Here.
Mayo,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
McLean Lane,
Here.
Miller,
Present.
O'Brien,
Here.
Purley,
Here.
Peter,
Here, Madam Clerk.
Plosky,
Present.
Reedy,
Here.
Reinhardt,
Here.
Ricard,
Present.
Simpson, Smith, Tunney,
Here.
Ward,
Here.
Whalen,
Here.
Willingham. I have 34 present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, please read Resolution 540.
Public hearing on proposed local law number J for 2021. A local law of the County of Albany, New York, limiting third-party food delivery services during a declared emergency. Affidavits of publication are on file in the clerk's office.
Madam Clerk, please read the first name.
Kevin Dugan,
Mr. Dugan, are you on?
I am, Chairman. I am. Thank you.
Okay, you've got 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kevin Dugan, and I'm the Government Affairs Director for the New York State Restaurant Association. I first want to thank Chairman Joyce, Council members Fine, Peter, and Reedy, and the rest of the legislature for bringing this important issue to the forefront. Our local restaurants have been taking it on the chin since the start of this pandemic, and this legislation will have an impact on their ability to weather the storm. We appreciate your acknowledgement of the strain that the current third-party fees place on Albany County restaurants and applaud you and County Executive McCoy for taking proactive steps to trying to remedy this problem. Fee structures for third-party food delivery providers are complicated, and we would like to thank you for taking a common sense approach that will have a meaningful positive impact on the restaurants in the capital region. We know the legislature has been approached about changing this legislation into a law that would cap delivery fees but would not cap the marketing fees. While that would certainly be beneficial for some, it would not have the desired effect or intended effect of helping local restaurants during this difficult time. Legislative caps only help restaurants if they cap delivery fees and cap other fees these large companies charge. For example, some platforms were charging marketing fees as high as 40% per transaction in some New York City restaurants during the first weeks of this pandemic, when restaurants were restricted to delivery only. This fee was simply charged for the restaurants to use the platform, which is why we thank and commend the Albany County Legislature for looking at legislation that would cap both. We also know that the model proposed in this local law works. The legislation the county is looking at mirrors what we see currently in New York City, in Westchester, and recently Monroe, where fees are capped at 15% for delivery and 5% for all other fees. Under this model, restaurants pay just 5% per order to the platform for pickup transactions and for transactions where the restaurant provides the delivery step, either through in-house or through an outside delivery service that they contract with separately. Under this model, restaurants would pay only 20% to the platform if they are receiving the combined service of listing and delivery itself. So far, we have received very positive feedback on the New York City model from our members in that region, and we encourage Albany County to do the same. Also, just for posterity's sake, the New York State Senate has also recently passed this version, and we're working on trying to get this version passed in the Assembly as well. At the end of the day, we know local governments are only considering fee caps because they want to help struggling restaurants in this time of need. Let's make sure any legislation does just that. We know that the granular details of these fee cap breakdowns don't exactly jump off the page. So in closing and simply, we want to emphasize that we fully support the proposed local law J. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan. Madam Clerk, please read the second name.
Jason Pierce.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Albany County legislators. My name is Jason Pierce. I'm a local Albany County resident and owner of a couple restaurants here in the city of Albany, and also the president of the Albany Restaurant Association. And I am here to speak in support of local law J for 2020. Representatives from Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub have likely tried to convince you that this legislation is not reasonable, that it negatively impacts their ability to profitably provide their services, that if it passes, they'll be forced to pull out of our region, that the structure of the fee caps is not reasonable, and that it should be a single cap for all fees. I'm here to humbly remind you that there is legislation that needs to be reviewed, discussed, and debated. And then there are bipartisan bills that no reasonable individual could or should be opposed to. Local laws whose benefit for Albany County residents and business alike are so obvious, necessary, and required that the only real debate should be how fast that it can be passed. Without this fee cap, third-party delivery services will continue to charge our local restaurants commissions and fees that frequently total over 25, 30, even 40%. These fees are neither reasonable nor appropriate given the services provided, but restaurant owners have no choice to pay them. The simple fact is that over 41% of consumers are relying upon food delivery apps to order their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In the last 5 years alone, the amount of food ordered via these apps has grown by almost 300%. Being listed on Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, and other third-party apps is no longer a choice, but rather a necessity. Lobbyists, likely having been paid a considerable amount to do so, will try to convince you that the companies they represent cannot be profitable without charging these fees. This could not be further from the truth. The simple fact is that it's the intense competition between the three leading food delivery apps, all trying to capture the largest possible percentage of market share in the hopes of putting their competitors out of business, which has made it difficult for any of them to generate profits. The food delivery apps will try to tell you that if this law passes, they'll be forced to pull out of the region, which will adversely affect our residents. But the reality is that it's not about that. I would remind all of you that this legislation is temporary. It is only designed to be here during the pandemic. They're trying to convince you that their business model is so fragile that providing a temporary reprieve from their exorbitant fees during a pandemic would place such a financial burden on their $6 billion a year industry that it couldn't survive without pulling out. If that's the case, then this legislation is clearly not the problem. It's their business model that's the real problem. Some will try to convince you that limiting the amount they charge restaurants for marketing to 5% deprives them of their ability to provide valuable and necessary marketing services to those restaurants. To be clear, the vast majority of our restaurants in this region spend 5% or less of their total revenues on advertising. The third-party food delivery services are trying to convince you that they require 100% of each restaurant's 5% marketing budget in order to market their service. Make no mistake, this is not about restaurants, it's about their market share. Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash aren't spending the marketing money they collect to promote restaurants. They're using it to increase market share and fight against one another. They're strategically placing ads on the internet and via social media platforms that not only don't benefit the restaurant, but in many cases are actually designed to capture sales that would have otherwise gone directly to the restaurant. Friends, these are challenging times. By September of last year, 1 in 6 restaurants across this country had shut down as a result of the COVID pandemic.
1 minute.
By the end of the year, over 110,000 restaurants had closed, and those remaining were struggling with the onset of winter weather and the loss of outdoor dining. Today, the restaurants that remain open are relying heavily upon takeout and delivery to survive. For many, over 50% of their revenues are generated from these third-party delivery apps. Before the pandemic, restaurants were lucky to earn 10 cents on every dollar that you spent. The
30
passage
seconds.
of this legislation, providing temporary relief from the exorbitant and untenable fees charged by these apps, could mean the difference between survival and failure. For many, it could mean the difference between laying off employees or bringing people back to work. For the county, it will buoy declining sales tax revenues. And for restaurants, it will ensure that for residents, it will ensure that their favorite restaurants survived. Don't get caught up in the debate or the discussion. Show our county, businesses, and residents that unlike our federal government, you're here for them right now when you're needed, and that you're willing to take immediate, decisive, and logical action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Is there anyone else in this remote meeting that wants to speak on local law J for 2020? Okay, the public hearing for resolution number 540 is now closed. I'd like to remind everyone to please heed the advice of medical professionals. Keep yourselves and your families safe. There's ever-changing situations surrounding the vaccine, so if you have any questions for yourselves or your constituents, please let staff know. It's an evolving situation, but the vaccine opening up and more pods opening up, there's more opportunity, so please let us know if you have any inquiries. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. McLean Lane, seconded by Mr. O'Brien. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing is now closed. Good night.